He defeated the Empire as Wicket the Ewok. He destroyed the evil Queen Bath Morda as Willow. He danced with David Bowie as a goblin. He taught Harry Potter to be a wizard as Flitwick.
Splendid.
And then he shut him in a vault as Griphook. He depressed a galaxy as Marvin. He did some Elvis as the Leprechaun.
Thank you very much.
He wore a big beard as Knickerbrick. He danced a jig for Johnny Depp. He travelled abroad with an idiot.
What are you doing?
And he stood in a bin with a face for Ricky Gervais. He's 3 feet 6 inches tall, wears UK size 4 shoes, and has blue-green eyes. He has 3 employees, has his own app, and has already written his autobiography. He could have been in Lord of the Rings, Game of Thrones, and Iron Man. But he wasn't. Instead, he's here now. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome your host and his disproportionately large ego, Mr. Warwick Davis.
Welcome to Star Wars Celebration Europe 2016. Fabulous to see you here for this wonderful Creatures, Droids and Aliens of the Force Awakens panel. You having a good time in Celebration? Yes. Fantastic. And as Mark already said, if you've got any photographic memories to share with us via Twitter, please use the hashtag SWCEPics and we'll show a few of the favorites. We've actually got a few to show you so far. So let's have a look at what's been going on. Then we have some costume characters. Somebody attacking a perfect stranger there. Okay. What else have we got? That's from the cosplay competition last night. Look at the size of that character. It makes me look even smaller. Look at that. It's incredible. And that was an actual cosplay creation. I mean, the guy had spent hours. He'd had to train actually to wear that suit. Which is quite incredible. And I showed that photo to some of our Creatures panel here earlier on today, and they were most impressed with that. And I believe we've got one more picture. Look at that, fantastic. I wonder how he got on the DLR dressed like that. Who knows, lots of strange looks. But anyway, we are here to celebrate the creatives behind the Creatures, Droids and Aliens of the Force Awakens. Now, I'm going to talk to this extremely talented and creative group, the people who specialize in turning beautiful, handsome actors like myself into strange, ugly alien creatures. Now, on me, this of course would take many hours to do, but I've noticed a few people around the convention center here who would only need a couple of minutes. But anyway, moving on before I get booed off. Get security ready, please. Before we meet the Creature FX team from The Force Awakens, let's see them in action. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Neil Scanlon, Julian, Vanessa, Kenny, Chris, Maria, Enric, Neil, and Brian. Creatures team. Fantastic. Well, it's lovely to have you all here. And it's very strange to see you out of your sort of natural habitat in the creature shop at Pinewood. It's fabulous to have you all here. These are people I work quite closely with when I'm working on the new movies, which is so it's really nice to have you here. Now, first of all, before we get started, could you introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about what your role is in all of this stuff?
Yeah, my name. Oh, sorry.
You need a microphone. Yes.
Can you hear me? Oh, you can.
Oh, yes.
So my name's Neil Scanlan. I'm the Creature FX, Droids and Special Makeup Effects Supervisor. So.
Just your kind of role in
yeah,
this.
So my role really is just in brief is to work with the director, work with production, to formulate a budget, figure out what we're going to make for the film, how those things are going to work, and then lead this team of people, helped by these incredible guys here, through the process of building the characters, taking them out onto the stage and performing them, putting them in front of the camera. I have the best job in the world.
Fabulous. Julian.
Hi there, I'm Julian Murray. I have pretty much the next best job in the world. I'm the supervising sculptor of our wonderful sculpting department, and I'm there to sort of nurture all our wonderful sculptors through our process of developing our designs through that process into fabrication in the MEX department. So it's a brilliant job, and looking forward to getting back to it. Actually, I've been resting for.
Hi, I'm Kenny Wilson. I run the model mould shop, and we make live casts, and we make the moulds from the sculpture that Julian does, and do the costumes, figures for Vanessa, you're going to meet in a minute, and yeah, it's great fun. What a way to earn a living.
Vanessa.
Fantastic.
Hi, I'm Vanessa Bastian. I supervise the fabrication department. We build all the costume bodies, essentially. We do all the soft engineering. We work very closely with the mechs and with the sculptors, and we pretty much work on everything that has a performer in it and most of the puppets that are puppeteered. And I think my job's the best job out of
My name's Maria Cork, and I supervise the hair department within the creatures. So any of the creatures that come in that have got hair or fur on them come through us. And largely on Force Awakens, our job was looking after and developing all the hair for Chewbacca. So actually, I think I've got the best job.
Hi, I'm Chris Clark. I possess the best job in the department. I'm a key animatronic designer, and I work very closely with Gustav Hugen on overseeing the build for and the output for the mechanical side of the creature build, and yeah, it's a great job, and yeah, I love it.
Hey, cool, Henrik.
My name is Henrik Svensson. My title is Creature FX Paint Finish Designer. I design and paint the creatures and droids, and of course, I have the best job in the world.
My name is Brian Herring. I was the puppeteer consultant for The Force Awakens. And
you got a fan club with you.
You have a fan base.
I appear to have the best job in the world because I got to look after BB-8 for most of the movie. And I also work with all these guys of how to put the puppeteers into the suits and how we make them work as living creatures.
Fabulous. So, looking at this team of people here, Neil, you know, you get a sense of really how many people it takes to create any of these individual creatures. It's astonishing. I don't think people here would have realised had they not seen all of you guys in front of them. Now, Force Awakens is full of wonderfully new creatures. There's some familiar creatures in there as well. Can you firstly talk us through the process of designing a Star Wars creature for The Force Awakens?
Yeah, of course. I mean, just before I start, I just would like to say thank you to all of you who have patiently queued up to attend this. It's amazing to see this. I can't believe that this little group of people would attract all of you guys. Fantastic. Thank you so much. Thank you. And I also think it's probably fitting as well because we're here because we are, like you, incredible, fans of Star Wars. And so I'd also like to thank the genius that is George Lucas and for the gift of Star Wars. We wouldn't be here without it, absolutely. Yeah. So some of you may have been to the panel before that just preluded this one, which is the concept panel. You may have heard some of the designers talk about their individual designs. So I'm not going to cover that again or go over that, but I think what's interesting is to think about where we were when we first started on this project. I mean, what an amazing phone call for me to have received. Secondly, to put a team of people together to try to get our heads around, really what the Star world is all about. And we kind of talked about the first time we saw the first movie and our experiences and what we took away from it. And I think that what George was incredibly clever at doing, and I think we all know this, but we have to kind of analyze it, is that he made this place that was in a galaxy far, far away. Somehow real and tangible. You felt that you could, somehow it was familiar. And I think that would put you at ease as a viewer. It made you feel like this place was not so detached. And I think that's a really important part of what we try to do, which is to try to make sure that what we create is not so incredible or fantastic that somehow you couldn't feel that maybe you might bump into this creature or this character. So I think there's an element about Star Wars which has this wonderful charm about it. It also has a sort of humor about it as well. I mean, if you think about it, a box on legs walking through an incredible vista, only in Star Wars would that not be seen as ridiculous, really. It's stunning that within that forum, your imagination can go to so many places, and if you treat it, I think, with sensitivity, it can really work out. So we kind of looked at all those aspects, and we also came to the conclusion, which I think many of you probably feel as well, is that Star Wars characters are incredibly simple. I mean, let's be honest, there's probably no one in this room right now that couldn't draw R2-D2, BB-8 or Rey's speeder as an outline, and you would instantly recognize it. And so those sort of things become the sort of goalposts. And the other thing is that in everything that we do, we absolutely, I think, have to do one thing, which is to remove our own sort of artistic ego and our own feeling that somehow we know better, to look back at the work of Ralph McQuarrie, look at the ILM creature shop of the time. That's the place where we have to put ourselves. We can build on that, and we can, in a sense, try to take these characters to a new place, but I think unless we pay due respect to the incredible work that these guys did before us, we are, in a sense, doing an injustice. And I also think my personal welfare would become rather at risk as well, should we go too far. So, I mean, that was just, to me, sort of cementing us in place. Shall I talk about how we...
Well, I was going to say to you, approval with JJ, how is it working with him, and how does that kind of relationship between you and him work in your department?
Yeah, I'd never worked with JJ before. I don't think JJ had actually worked with animatronics before, so certainly on Force Awakens it was a whole new beginning, and there's that sort of first meeting that you have with the director, and will he like me, or are we going to hit it off? God, he's quite a terrifying and incredibly brilliant man, and so it's a testing first meeting. But the idea really is that to sort of swamp him with ideas, really, we created hundreds of sketches, literally hundreds of sketches, and bit by bit we would show them to him, initially between here and Los Angeles, and he would pick certain designs, or you would listen to him, you could hear him, and part of, I suppose, my job is to try and see the world through the director's eyes and try to understand why JJ is responding to a certain character. Not why I'm responding to it, why he is. And so over a period of a few months, by generating these sketches, we began to get a feeling that this is how JJ sees his world. So from there, when JJ came to join us, we began to have a kind of X Factor moment, as we called it. We'd have the concept designers, we'd have all our characters lined up in a workshop, we'd give JJ a post-it note, and he would walk along the line and place a post-it note on any design that he particularly liked. And so through a series of eliminations, we ended up with the finals, and the final characters were there, in a sense, were the ones that we knew we would take forward. We weren't sure which location they would be in yet, but we knew that they were potentially the characters that we would do. And it was literally that process, an auditioning process of the characters in their own right, that allowed us to get to where we are, the characters that you see in the movie. And then just through further conversations and understanding more from the film, we were able to fine-tune them and make them specifically for a script moment.
Absolutely, and also, you know, working with someone like JJ, who's worked a lot with CG and in that kind of world, was it hard for you to convince him that, you know, animatronics were a very useful tool to have in his toolbox for this film?
Yeah, I think, you know, briefly, you know, my career started over 35 years ago or something, and at that point we were the stars, you know, we were the new generation. You know, we were paid to make mistakes and do things very badly. But over the years we got better at it. And then CG comes along, and CG's phenomenal and brilliant, and it can do just about anything. And so now we in a sense, we're beginning to play a little bit of a sort of, you know, behind the scenes role. So we started probably at the lowest point we could with JJ, which was, is there anything that we can do which can, you know, really be done practically? So it was a great place to start, because we took the journey together as a department with the director. We would show JJ something, and he would respond to that, and I think that educated him. It gave us the confidence to try something a little braver, and bit by bit, as the film developed, certainly in the pre-production stages, we just got more and more you know, what was the right word? Confident with each other.
And he seemed to fully embrace that, didn't he, with the film, because there was a lovely balance of CG, of performance, of animatronic. It was a beautiful balance and seamless in a way, and I think it was wonderful.
Yeah, I do, and I think, you know, incredibly brave of a director to work with a group of people he's never worked with before, to work with in essentially an art form he's never worked with before, and his mantra was always, we do everything practical. It has to be practical, and where we couldn't achieve something practical, then we'd call on ILM, and ILM would come in, the digital guys, and help us out. So it was, yeah, it was an amazing, a huge responsibility, but an incredible task that, you know, amazing.
Absolutely.
An amazing man. Absolutely.
Well, I'm going to turn to Julian now. So say we've got our design, it's been approved.
Yep.
So Neil then hands over to you, and you take what is essentially some illustrations and create them in 3 dimensions.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's important to also just point out that the whole concept team is actually very much part of our team. We are all one department, so that process of the design process actually follows right through the whole department, and it's not something that stops at that point with a drawing. That's actually the beginning. Obviously, with certain characters that we stick very on message with a particular design, and others it's a sort of a starting point or a set of guidelines. And with JJ, for example, or other directors we work with also going forward, that they've evolved hugely from that point, and that's a very exciting process as well. So that's our kind of starting point, and I suppose if we want to get into the slightly more technical side of it, so from there we start to determine scale of characters, be it someone like yourself or Ian White at the other end of the scale, or everything else in between. And with those, a lot of those sort of characters, not obviously things like the Happerbore or the Big Beast, those sort of characters, but ones that are essentially human scale. We go through a process of working out what that scale is. That's often probably sometimes predetermined by the concept work, or indeed by the director who has a vision for what that character is, and then it sort of takes on a life of its own, and that becomes something else. But so ideally we work in a process where, so we cast, hopefully at the earliest stages possible, we cast the performer who's going to be in that particular suit. And
that's life casting. What you do, you take an actor and you basically cover them in alginate.
Well, I was actually talking about casting.
Oh, casting. Oh, I've got the job. We've already got the job.
Then we pour plaster all over them and make them all.
Yeah, and so you create essentially a kind of a model of that actor.
It's always a pleasure when it comes to you.
I know, I've been through that process a number of times now.
I'd say you have.
And then you say you've got somebody's bust, basically, a bust of their head.
That's right. So, yeah, so that's our starting point there. So we've got the artwork, and we have a very faithful life cast of the actor-performer. And for those particular characters, that gives us the opportunity to make that as bespoke as possible, i.e. that we can make it as close-fitting as possible, so which obviously facilitates much greater movement and expressive potential with a suit that's obviously the best fit it could possibly be. We also have to accommodate obviously the mechanics and the fabrication side of that.
And we liaise on that, don't we?
That's right. So we talk right from the beginning that our starting point is that we we'll talk with Chris or Vanessa, whoever, and we get them in and we discuss what are the what the requirements of a particular character.
Julian, I think it's worth mentioning that what Julian's sort of describing to you is one thing, but from my perspective, and certainly from Julian, is that you start off with this little drawing, and although the concept guys have thought about it, it is a very, very different challenge to take a two-dimensional drawing.
Sure.
If we take one of Warwick's characters, for instance, we know and have worked with Warwick before, but to convert that into a workable, usable, and aesthetically pleasing design is actually a very, very skillful thing to do. So Julian and his team are really at the very forefront of creating the foundations for any character that we make, and it's an amazing thing to.
It is. You're an artist. I mean, you're taking a lump of clay and you're creating something beautiful from it.
That's right. I mean, that, as I said, that's the start of that process. And so once we've got over the practicalities of scale and the infrastructure of it in terms of the mechanical side of it, and what we need that character to do and perform, then we can actually get into the nuts and bolts of really starting to bring that character to life as a three-dimensional character. And really, so we get in there, we're using wet clay, and we're working quite quickly with a lot of these characters. We try and keep a head sculpt down to literally like 2 weeks. It's quite a quick turnaround, but I think we think that, well, we try and keep it within 2 weeks. But the idea is to keep it quite lively and not overwork things. We think that works better. But also, I've lost my thread. So anyway, we're carrying along down that line. But I also like to just say that I think this is a really important part of this process, is that all the sculptors that work with me, they're all entirely individual. And they bring something completely different to that design. So, I mean, at every stage through fabrication, the mechs and the painting and the hair work and everything, the idea is that we try and add extra value everywhere we can along that design process and that creative process. And so everybody is always mindful of how we can take that a bit further, how we can enhance that. And essentially what you'll see is sometimes what you get in terms of the image, but there's just so much more value and depth and layering in there as well, and that's what we really try to do at every stage. And
so once you've finished your sculpt, you've done this beautiful creation, it's all been approved, everybody loves it, it then gets passed on to Kenny there.
It does, yeah.
Who then does what with it? What do you do with this beautiful sculpt that Julian's created?
Well, once we got the sculpt, it depends on what they want the material from. So if it's silicon mould, if it's we can do a fiberglass mould, depends what they want out of it. If they want something firm, we'll do a soft mould. But mainly, 9 times out of 10, it's a fiberglass mould. And then when we run foam latex or silicon skins. Which
so you produce a positive of Julian's sculpt, but now it's in foam or whatever the product is that
it's a negative of these.
Negative
yes,
of that, right.
Yeah. And we start off sometimes doing the life casting, and then it becomes exactly a bust or fiberglass that you can then sculpt on to fit that person perfectly,
So you then
just to pick on that, sorry, obviously, so when we were talking about casting the actor and life casting the actor, that actor is, we sculpt over that life cast right from the very beginning, so it's always a bespoke item that is fitting exactly to that character.
Yep.
So.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So you've now produced something that's a flappy load of latex, but is in the shape of Julian's sculpt.
Yes.
That's where we're at.
Yes, and we will core that out. We'll core that out to a certain thickness, which would be the thickness of the skin, and then we'll make a mould of the core and a cast of the core, and we pass that on to Chris, so we then, like the bone structure, if you like,
I think one of the things that Ken often says to me, which is quite, if anybody there considers what Ken's department does, is that you have incredibly complex shapes, and to make what they call a mold of that, or to take a cast of that, is really just like a jigsaw puzzle. And as Ken says, it's a lifelong apprenticeship. I think every time something comes along, but it's it is an incredible skill, and again something that we do better than anyone else in the world here.
Allegedly.
Ken's department is incredibly important to us because we can't make anything unless Ken does a great job. And when you make a mold, we have these things where the lines fit together, and if those lines aren't hairline, that's a nightmare. You get these seams, you get everything else. So I just like to sort of, in a sense, pat Ken's shoulder for a minute, because whatever Julian has sculpted, it was all pointless unless Ken can actually capture that for real and pass it down the line.
Absolutely. And Vanessa, what stage is it at when you get hold of it, and what do you do with it?
We usually get also Kenny. He would he live casts everybody, as we said. He then gives us the full body of that performer in fiberglass as a stand, has a detachable arm and legs, and that's what we build the suits on. So either we've got say it's a fat suit, we get a foam latex suit and the life cast, and then we're putting in fixings, we're cutting it up so that you can move in it, that it could be painted or costumed, or we've got the live cast, or we've got a head that's been sculpted, which often goes to the mech shop, or it's a mask, and then we're building the bodies. So there's patterning of foam or carving foam. We're building the legs, often building the feet, hands. We do all of the fastenings as well. It's sort of soft engineering, really.
Yeah.
It's using a performer as a skeleton and creating an entire creature around them. Or if it's a puppet or an animatronic, we're building the muscles over the mech. So essentially, it's always a
So
similar.
you end up working quite closely with the actor. We've worked together,
Yeah, really closely,
and I will
yeah.
say you're considerate of who's going to be wearing this. You know, you do think about
We try
whether or
to.
not we can move or not. It's not always possible to keep us cool because, of course, if you're having to build up areas of our bodies to
Yeah.
create the right shape, it's not possible. But what I have noticed over the years, the technology in these foams and these products that you use has advanced, and
Yes.
they're not as hot as they used to be. Because it used to
No.
be just high density foam sort of squashed in,
Yeah.
but now there's all sorts of other products, which is really good. But I know you spend many hours, you know, making everything right.
We do, we try to. And especially with Star Wars, a lot of the locations were so hot. It was crucial because with many of them mechanical heads, the eyes of the creature don't line up with the performer's eyes. And even if they did, they're mechanical eyes. They can see very little, probably.
Oh, yeah,
Hear
probably, yeah.
Virtually
Yes.
nothing.
Sorry about that.
Breathe a tiny little bit. So it's quite difficult. We've got to try and make it so you're comfortable, that you don't overheat, because it's, Simon Pegg in the fat suit had a real problem with the heat was phenomenal.
Yeah.
He did incredibly well, it's vital to your survival as a performer. And you have to be comfortable, otherwise you can't perform. You know, you're bringing this character to life. You've got to give it something else. And we spend a huge amount of time. All my team are exceptional. They're very diverse. They're costume makers, prop makers. They come from a sculpting background. They can come from mechanical backgrounds. And we're all fascinated with scratch building or using new materials. So anything. You can buy things from Wix, or you could buy stuff from, I don't know, soft furnishings shop, or you could use things from your kitchen, whatever it works for the character, use it, plastics, foams, anything. It's very dynamic and it's very fun.
So you might be at home one evening and suddenly have a brainwave when you open a drawer in the kitchen about, that could be part of this character.
Yes. I go running into
Spatula.
the mould shop with it, and Kenny goes, Kenny, mould it, look, we can use it.
That's quite a lot, actually.
No, it's fantastic that you still think in that way, because a lot of our cosplayers who we had here last
Yes.
night, that's the way they have to
Yes.
think to create these characters
Yeah.
that copy your designs.
Yeah, that's what this job is. This is what Star Wars is. It's the most fun you can have.
And I think, what Ness is sort of saying there as well is what's really interesting is the crew of people, where they all come from. I mean, the crew is such a diverse group of people. They're people who have spent their time working in their bedrooms, just like the guys that make these costumes, just like the guys that build the BB-8s that came to join, the R2-D2s and came to join us on the film. I think what's fantastic is that if there's anybody out there in the audience that aspires to want to do what we do, it's all, you don't have to be, do a long course or go off and do. It's all about your own imagination, how you use materials, and just having fun and being imaginative with it. We just happen to be in the really special place that someone's going to give us lots of money to do it, rather than having to do it on your own.
Well, case in
makes a big
point,
difference.
actually, it's quite interesting. A member of your team, Justin Pickethley, I went to school with him, and he was useless at school, and now he's got a job with them.
Yeah, and I think probably Justin
and
might
he's
be
here
in the
somewhere.
audience, so you may as well show yourself, Justin.
That just shows you can still have a job even if you're no good at school. So there you go. Now, we've got our character. Obviously, it looks fantastic thanks to these individuals here, but there's no life in it. There's no performer in it, but its face doesn't move. That's where that's where you come in.
Yes, that's where I come in.
Animatronics. Now tell us about what that involves.
Well, basically an animatronic is a mechanical representation of an organic life form. And we're kind of charged in a way. Our job is to actually, twofold, is actually give the character life, and then also to inherently instill within it the actual character that's desired, and the ability to actually make that character with the movements that we design into the actual animatronic.
Yeah, it's interesting. So it's not just about making it move. You have to consider the personality of this beast.
Well, yeah, totally. I mean, it's amazing. There are quite a few animatronic guys who work who sometimes they break the face down into individual components. Yeah, it's like eyebrows and this, but I like to consider the face as a whole. And then one of the first things I do personally is I go to talk to Neil, and I sort of say, because we don't know the script, it's all so secret. The only person in our department who's read the script is Neil and Katie, I think. So I go to Neil and say, I know nothing about this. So what's the character of this particular creature, you know, and what's the scenes he's in, basically. Then I'll go back and I'll stare at the sculpt. We'll get a foam and a core from Kenny, and I'll stare at it and pull the foam around and actually design with it what I personally think is the actual character, which conveys what it has to convey. And then it's just a case of never losing sight of that. It doesn't matter. It's like, in a way, a sculptor. Even though a sculptor will go in and start detailing an eye, you'll always step back from it and then look at it as a whole and check the whole thing as a whole. And we have to do the same thing. Even though we're going into an individual, you know, we're designing like an eyebrow or an eye mechanism, it's good to step back metaphorically and look at the whole thing as a whole again and check that you're just not building something which moves around in a certain way. It has to be alive, basically.
And I will say, I mean, it's incredible, having worked inside some of your creations. I mean, the detail and the kind of mechanics that goes on a very small scale is quite incredible. And these servos, if any of you have worked with radar control cars or model planes, etc., that is simplistic compared to what you do, isn't it?
Yeah, well, I mean, it's one of those things with, I mean, it's always, when you approach, we build all sorts, from full creatures to something, you know, it's not always people in a suit, but a lot of what we do is. And the whole point of that is that there's a head in the middle of all this, so all the mechanics have to work around that head, you know, and you sometimes haven't got room to put a paddle or a movement ideally in the place. So you have to come up with a complex way of actually making that paddle move in the arc that you want it to.
It's a very precise operation. I mean, sometimes the servos are sitting, you know, millimeters from an actor's face.
Well, this is the thing, we have to make sure it's not too close, because if it gets hot, then it's going to burn you. And if we've done it already, sorry about that. But we have to consider, as it's been mentioned before, like, first of all, you've got to be able to breathe. And sometimes they're so small, the skin's actually over your mouth. So we'll have to make a little vac form channel for you to breathe from and put fans in. Then we have to think you've got to see. So sometimes you sculpt, don't you? You put actually sticks from the eyes. So we can see where the eyes actually sit in the sculpt.
Get an eye line in, but it's often quite difficult.
Whether it's a gap in the nictitating gallery here, or whether it's through the nostrils or through the mouth. So when you're walking, we have to swing the mouth open so you don't fall over the set. And we have to think about all these things before we even start actually approaching the animatronic. We have to tick all those boxes first.
And you have to make them durable. You know, these things, okay, they might only be used for one scene, but they've got to be reliable, haven't they?
No, totally. And I don't think we've had hardly anything really go wrong, touch wood.
No, nothing ever breaks down.
No, nothing, no. Actually, no, Neil's right. We've had nothing break down at all, ever, and we've had no fires.
That's good to know. That's good to know.
How's that burn? Is it all right?
So Maria, now you have a very interesting job, and I don't think anybody here would consider somebody would have such a job. But you're involved with hair, basically.
It's a bit of a specialised one. We normally get the skins towards the very end of the job, so they've been painted. And although sometimes we'll make wigs for characters that will get glued on at the end, most of the time we get the skin and we're punching the hairs in one at a time, so you can alter the direction. You could do whole crowns in heads, and you can change the density. And
So
we're using all sorts of different
one at a
materials.
time then?
One at a time.
Individual hairs?
Yeah, individual hairs growing out of the head, so you can control everything about it as you go, and colour blends and everything like that.
So give us some sense of how long it would take to finish a hairy character, say Chewbacca, for example.
Chewbacca was a bit of an anomaly from any other hairy character we've ever made because he's 7'6" as a character, so it was enormous, and there's so many different techniques going on in that character. So the majority of it is a lycra bodysuit that Fabrication would have made to fit the actors, and we had 3 different actors playing Chewbacca in episode 7, so we had to do everything 3 times over and then double up the suits because they had to be restyled every day. And the process of getting the hair in, you can see some of the pictures on the screen at the moment, it's the same process of doing a high-end wig, so you've got a tiny little crochet hook and you're knotting the hairs, double knotting so that it lasts a long time, into the lycra, all the way up the suit, and then the head is punched in the same way we were just describing, so you put the face hair afterwards, so you've got more control over the blends of the colour and the direction of the hair.
So that's one hair at a time again, Maria, isn't it? Which is
Yeah.
the thing, that's the thing. Yeah.
Yep. It's one of those jobs that if you look at it from outside, everyone looks at it and goes, oh, that's incredibly painstaking, you must have the patience of a saint. But I think anyone in our department would say that that's part of the joy of it, is that you're doing the precision bits, and when you're done with your job, you're seeing the finished item. You're putting the little final touches on any character and adding that extra layer of realism by changing the texture of the skin and that kind of thing.
I think it's worth acknowledging as well, you know, that when me and Maria sat down, as we all did, and we looked at what Stuart Freeborn had done with Chewbacca, and just how incredible and how brilliant his work was and is. I mean, we, in many ways, struggled to emulate his work. We didn't really take Chewbacca anywhere better than where Stuart had taken it. And for thinking that when Stuart did this, and we're sitting on a stage now telling you how we did it, isn't that just incredible that this makeup artist in his day was able to produce this iconic and yet brilliantly considered suit. It is a real masterpiece, the Chewbacca suit, in every single way. And the more that we got closer to it, the more that we understood that, really. So, you know, I just think it's worth really knowing just what an incredible job Stuart had done. It's amazing.
Absolutely, absolutely, yeah.
There was that amazing point when we collected as much reference material as we could. We went through all the archives of the press shots and all the still photographs we could get from the original films, and you're picking out specific things that make him look like Chewie. You know, there's essences in certain photos because you can't match every single picture. You've just got to pick out certain things. And even once the whole thing was made, we found that keeping that proved really difficult because Chewbacca tends to have his neck quite tucked down. And as he moves his head from side to side, the hair on his neck tends to puff right out. And suddenly you've lost part of the essence of what the character is. So we started playing around with stitching bits of the hair with invisible fishing line just to hold those shapes in. And all the little details like that, keeping it looking like that over a whole day shooting and throughout a whole film, keeping some sense of continuity was a bit of a mission.
Absolutely. What strikes me, having heard from you guys, is the attention to detail and the pride you take in your work, even though at times somebody in the audience might not appreciate how much work went into it because the shot has not been close enough. I mean, I do find it incredible, but you have to do that, don't you, just in case the director calls for a close-up of that part of the character that you might not have expected.
Yeah, I think that's it's a really what's the right word, nerve-wracking time when you go to see the film, because every single character has to be given the same consideration, because you have to cover your arse. We never know whether or not, you know, any director in JJ's case, whether or not that character will suddenly become a foreground character, and so each one is considered to the same level. Yeah, you know, yeah, it's the way to do it.
I can just say from the mechanical side, often we, rather than just doing all the obvious moves, I mean, I try and get some of the young lads to do it. We put like muscle groups in, little muscle twitches which would actually move while you're actually doing your facial moves that people would notice. And it's not so much that people would notice that that's happening, that I think subconsciously they would notice that there's a dead area of the face that would actually be moving. So a lot of the time we thought, oh, the work we do isn't directly noticed consciously, but if we don't bother doing it, subconsciously you'd know it was wrong. And it actually elevates everything by another 10-20%, you know.
Yeah, I mean, something I've noticed coming into the animatronics now is that kind of the blinking sequences that are done automatically by the animatronic itself, so that it becomes something that you don't notice as a viewer, but if it wasn't there, it would look odd, and it's not controlled manually, it's an automatic random program. It's fabulous.
It can be overridden, but as I say, Matt's,
keeps it alive,
Matt's
doesn't
system
it?
can just sort of be dialed in to keep it alive.
Yeah.
And until you actually override it and puppeteer a specific scene. Yeah, it's great.
So Henrik, let me turn to you now. You are in charge of making these characters look real.
Yeah. Well, first of all, I'd like to say I was 9 years old when I saw you in Return of the Jedi, and I spent my whole life and career hoping to find a project like Star Wars to work on. And so when I got the call from Neil to join his team, of course, it was an incredible day. I tend to put the creatures we're doing droids into 3 different segments, really. I have the droids, like R2, BB-8. We have all of our amazing originally designed aliens that guys designed, and Julian and the guys in the sculpting department sculpt. Then we have, as you see on the screen, we have what we call the legacy characters. When I paint our original designs, of course, I start by having a sit down with Neil and said designer, and we have a little talk about what kind of paint job we think would fit this character. Then it's my job to actually make them all come alive and fit into this universe. Then we have others like R2 here on the picture, or Admiral Akbar. It's a little bit different. These characters feel a bit like coming home, if you will. It feels very comforting coming into work and working on something that has been part of your whole life. You've known these characters your whole life. And it's tremendously, it's the 9-year-old Henrik's dream come true, of course, to sit like you see right there. I'm painting R2. Then we have, the original, the variety of what we do as well, for me is what's so amazing, and that's why as a creature painter, I couldn't get a better job in the world. I can come in on a Monday and paint an R2-D2. I can do, like you see here, a creature mechanized head on a Tuesday, Wednesday, and by Thursday I would have a Hapabor, or a creature that's 10 meters long. And the variety of what I get to do on these movies are absolutely amazing. And what makes us all, or it helps us, we can hit the ground running because we don't have to spend an awful lot of time figuring out what kind of movies these are. It's movies that we've all loved and cherished our whole lives. And I think we all know these movies inside out. So we know with ourselves what will look good, I say the fans, but we're as much of a fan as anyone else out there. We're extreme fans of these movies, and hopefully what we've done is to your liking, and we're just trying to keep the tradition going.
Absolutely. So, before we talk to Brian about the kind of the performance aspect of all this, we've got a few characters here. So these are actual characters from The Force Awakens. It's very exciting, this. And Neil, as we reveal each one, if you could talk us through kind of the what these are and kind of what's going on underneath. So this first one here, who's this guy? There he is.
Okay, so very quickly, this little character. This is to me absolutely Star Wars. This was a character that JJ had an idea for that he wanted to reveal in Jakku, and we'd run out of money. And he turned around to me and said, I said, we can make that design. And he said, well, how much is it going to cost? I said, we'll do it for 100 quid. And Ivan, who was the person who designed it, turned around and said, no, what, we'll do it 50 quid. So he built it in his lunchtime for 50 quid. He gave me the 50 quid and I never gave it to the production. I must remember to do that. So it's a really simple, just incredibly to me, incredibly Star Wars. And all we did was bury me in the sand. It was on the end of my arm, and we pushed it out through the sand. I sank into the sand, it came out, and that was it. Just a little moment. So nothing complex, nothing amazing, just a puppet on a
But still very effective.
Very effective, and so Star Wars.
Brilliant.
Charm.
So let's move on to this one. So this is getting a bit more sophisticated now.
Yeah.
This guy here. Now I'm going to just plug him in at the back, and he'll start.
So this is a good example of a person in a suit. This is we have different names for characters because we always work in code. But this is all the examples we've spoken about. This has a foam latex skin. It has hair that Maria's put into it. It's actually worn by a performer, and the performer puts his head down like this. So the head is forward at this point. So he only sees the world from that point of view. But again, the performer that does this is incredible at being able to bring out their character. You see this in the film a couple of times. JJ really had a sort of an affection for this particular character, and I think he works very well. He may be a character that goes on, and you'll see him in the other movies as well. But yeah, exactly what we're all talking about, really.
And I think it's wonderful to see this. You know, people do assume that sometimes in post-production these movements are put in, but you can see all of the hard work that the team has done here, and it actually has come to life before our very eyes here.
Yeah, this is just working on what we call a kind of life cycle. It's just running under auto. It's random. It's been put in there by Matt Denton, who is one of who leads up our sort of electronics side, and he's just programmed that. And at any time during a performance, we can take over live performance and add all the nuances on top, or anything that JJ may have asked for. Yep.
Fabulous. Right, let's look at this next guy. Somebody very dear to me. This is one of them.
Warwick Davis.
I wore this
Warwick
guy.
Davis.
There he is. And I'm just going to plug him in. And I don't know whether you'll get a sense of this. We might want to put the microphone near. But the noise inside here of the servos, can you hear that? I mean, it's a very high-pitched squeal, but all these servos are high-frequency servos. And so I can't hear anything when I'm inside all of this. But as you can see, he's not a pretty-looking chap.
Nor see anything, probably.
I can't see anything through this one either.
You're completely blind in this case. And this is a silicone skin, just for technological, from technique's point of view. This is a foam latex skin, and this is a silicone skin. The silicons that we're able to use today are absolutely phenomenal. But I just refer back to the fact that only certain characters we would do that way, because again, we don't want to step too far away from the legacy that's Star Wars. We don't want to just make these things impressive for their own reason. We want to make them fit in that world.
Absolutely. And finally, who have we got here?
And that's a static display of our character that you'll have seen in Maz's Castle. Same deal, an animatronic head, foam latex. Actually, it was Chris that mechanised this one. You can see as I move this around, all the different mechanisms that sit inside, which are all driven, again, through either a very simple performance system, which is really just your two, almost like a radio control that you would fly a model plane on, or a much more complex system which allows you to input your thumb movements, your finger movements, your wrist movements. All of these things are almost like playing a piano. The performer in who is on the outside working with, say, Warwick on the inside, is in a microphone so they can talk to each other, and together they bring the characters to life.
It's about coordinating the performance.
Absolutely.
Which Brian can pick up on. And also, as you do talk about this, I understand that we're very excited to be able to do this today, that we have a brand new creature that we can reveal today and have a live demonstration. If you could just tee that up, and as we see the creature, maybe Brian can take over in talking about the performance elements.
Well, this is a character that we want to show to you. It's from Rogue One, and any minute now he'll come. Hopefully he'll arrive. Brian will probably give you a little bit of a commentary over the top, but yeah, we call him Space Monkey. If you welcome Space Monkey to the stage.
Yes.
Go Space Monkey.
So, Space Monkey has, as with all of these wonderful suits, a performer inside, and also a performer externally working his face. And a lot of the time, as with Warwick in The Force Awakens, in this particular case, this performer can see, but oftentimes they can't see and they can't hear. So what they get is someone like myself or one of the other animatronics performers in their ear, being their eyes as well as operating their face. So as they're walking around the set, the guys are giving them direction, they're taking direction from the director and relaying it to them as well, and keeping them safe as well, because a lot of the time, because they've got no vision, they could quite, just walk into things. So as well as... as well as performing the faces, we also have to keep them safe quite often. And sometimes they don't listen to us and they just kind of misbehave.
He just threw me at me. I'm not going to argue with him, though.
No manners.
Oh, hang on, he's coming down there now.
So the character is Nick, isn't it? Nick Kellington.
Yeah, Nick Kellington, ladies and gentlemen.
So Nick is our performer on the inside. Absolutely.
So as well as the animatronics, we also had a lot of rod puppets in The Force Awakens. We had, let's say, Bonraku puppets. We had...
Did you get me those plans?
We had straightforward hand puppets as well, very much.
That's brilliant.
And if I just mentioned to you that if you get any sense of that, just to say that working with Gareth Edwards, it has pushed. The creatures you'll see them in Rogue One have gone in a new direction as well. That's been led by Gareth Edwards. So I think you're due to see some, and we feel so very exciting takes on what the creatures should look like. Gareth's definitely got a very singular eye on that, and they're really exciting.
And also the way they were performed as well, because of the way Rogue One has been made, we had to do a lot of stuff with very little removal. So things were constantly on the move, and we had to really keep our wits about us a lot of the time because the camera, we didn't quite know where it was going next. So characters like that had to be completely free running and free roaming. So we all had to really bring our best game with us every day because we didn't quite know where the camera was going to be. A lot of these characters you can set up in a certain position, you know where the rods are going to be removed from, you know where you can hide the performers. But with as we've moved forward, a lot of it there's been as little removal as possible. So we have to find people that can cover a lot of different disciplines and be able to roll with whatever is thrown at them on the day. So we've had we had a core group of people that worked right the way through the movies, and they have to cover a lot of different disciplines from a puppetry style.
Absolutely. Thank you very much, Brian. Now, maybe you can just briefly talk a little bit about, we haven't got much time, about the droids, of course, because your department's involved with creating the droids, in particular, your character BB-8, but there's another guy, Big Red, is that...
Big Red, as we know Big Red, because a lot of the times, until those books come out, we don't know what they're called. We know them as numbers. That was Space Monkey. He'll have a name that I don't know Space Monkey's name.
He does already have a name, but I've forgotten it.
Yeah, exactly. So we're very surprised when we see a lot of those. But Big Red was the character that walked out of Maz's castle, this one here. Yeah. And we went off and we found a circus performer called Katie Cartwheel. She went in there, she worked on stilts, and we had to build that suit around her. So we would work with the fabricators and the mech guys and make sure that she could wear it, she could walk in it, she could see. It was really important, especially because that was so high up, that the performers inside are comfortable with what they're doing and they've got enough time to work up a decent performance.
Very good indeed. Well, I know we've got some people in the audience who want to ask a couple of questions. If you don't
it'd be
mind.
great for people to ask
So
questions.
Mark,
Fantastic.
have you got a question for us first of all out there somewhere?
Yes.
Very
Let's
good.
see. Anybody have a question?
Somebody over there. There's a few around here.
Many as you want. As many
I
as
have a
you
guy
want.
right here with these glasses on. Come on out.
Okay.
Hiya. When the BB-8 was first shown at the celebration stage, the reaction from the audience was instant and the whole world fell in love with BB-8. Did you anticipate that when you were working on it before you got to show us?
Absolutely. And that's no credit to us. I think, again, BB-8 started life as a little sketch on a napkin drawn by JJ. The first time we ever showed JJ BB-8 as a real-world entity was about 2 days before we started to shoot. Again, what an incredible amount of confidence the man must have had that we were able to deliver something. But on that day that we showed JJ and Kathleen Kennedy, I think it was clearly obvious that this design was going to be an absolute winner. And Brian and Dave Chapman, who brought him to life, I think just did an incredible job of giving him a personality. And that's much more difficult than you think with, a dome on a ball. And Brian, maybe you want to talk about that process, because it was you guys that took him through the film.
When I first saw BB-8 drawings, I just thought, this is great because it looks like you've seen it before. It looks like R2-D2, but it looks nothing like R2-D2. So I was initially given a very small puppet, which I think Josh Lee showed yesterday on the panel. It was about this big. And I shot some very quick tests with it, and we worked out with Neil about a bit of a body roll as it went forwards and backwards. And the more I played with it, the more I realized that you could make him look down, look scared, look up, look frightened, back off, come forwards. And we went away when we finally got the big puppet. And we spent 2 weeks, Dave and myself, with a video camera in a soundstage, and we worked out an entire vocabulary of movement for BB-8, what he could do, what he maybe didn't look so great doing with a puppet, which he might look better doing with a mechanized version. And we found his character in those 2 weeks, and then we showed it to JJ right at the end. You know, it was very, very tight to the wire. And as Neil said, you know, he had enough confidence in us just to let us do it. And so we found his personality, and it was. But the thing with the crew we have, with the film crew, with the British film crew, they work on Bond movies, they work on Batman movies. They've made everything, and there's nothing they haven't seen. And they loved BB-8 very early on, so we knew we were going to be okay with it. But it was still.
What makes BB-8 better than Bond?
He's cuter. He's cooler.
Absolutely.
He's cooler than Bond.
Absolutely. Can I just say though, Warwick, that I made the first BB-8, the tiles, when I stuck them all on there for the first time, and it took a while to do that, but it looked fantastic. It just grew in front of our eyes. It was amazing. And when JJ first saw it, he was really amazed.
That's great. That must be a very special moment for you to present something to a director and just read their face immediately that they're loving it.
When he felt it, because he knew that it was made of the rubber tiles were all separate, he was amazed.
Fantastic. Elliot, do you have a question out there for us?
Yes, right over here.
Yep.
Hi guys, thanks ever so much for being here. With a lot of the puppets you make, you have to make duplicates. How much care and attention is made to make sure every single one is accurate? And then, say when you're filming, if something happens and there's a dent or a scuff, how much work has to go into making them all accurate again?
I mean, absolute care is taken. I mean, it's you know, that each one has to look exactly the same. And I always, not meant to be quite so literal as this, but actually the shooting process is a little bit. I sort of feel like it must have been, in the trenches in the war, quite frankly, is that there are hours where you are not particularly busy, and then there are incredible moments where just the whole world revolves around you for those few moments that you're filming and the camera is on you. And then there are hours spent back at the workshop making sure that each character looks as good the next day. It is a grueling, and it takes a certain type of person who wants to do this type of work, but you do get a buzz out of it. But so literally each character is replicated as near as we can possibly get it, and it's then maintained to look that way just by, we have people back in the workshop, as I said, we have service crew that are on the set servicing. There's a whole kind of Formula One team to make sure that that character works for the time it's required to work on in front of the camera.
And it's, as Maria said earlier, she had 2 Chewie suits.
We had to have 2 suits for each person, because if we shot on him for one day, you'd get dreadlocks where the bandolier bag sits, and it all changes throughout the day as a person sweats into the suit. So one day shoot would be one day in the workshop with 2 people restyling it ready for the next day. So it was a constant switch over.
We did also lose one of our characters during the making of, and I have a suspicion that he may have already arrived, because I see this person here, and I have to say, even from here, your suit looks absolutely incredible.
Yeah, that's incredible.
It's an amazing piece of work. I think you should stand
up there for us,
and show us. It's just stunning.
Brilliant. Well, I mean, that just shows you how inspirational you guys are.
Well, it makes me feel like someone on my crew's been moonlighting.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, I mean, sitting here, I obviously had a great deal of respect for these guys and what they do, having worked with them, but I'm sure that has spread to all of you in this room, so let's give a big hand for the Creatures team.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Fabulous, fabulous, fabulous. Ladies and gentlemen, it's been a pleasure to be here for this show. There's lots more to come here at Celebration Europe later on this afternoon. Next up, I'll be interviewing the one and only Mr. Anthony Daniels right here on this stage. Then we have a Rebels panel later on, lots of exclusives about Series 3. And finally today, the EA Games panel. Again, some exclusives in there for the gamers amongst you. But in the meantime, I wish you well. Have a great time at Celebration, and may the Force be with you. Goodbye.